for you in case you want to sort of reread them. They're over there. Should we read them? Here, you take this one, I'll go around. Oh, yeah, there's Shelley.
Shelley? Anybody else?
Pardon me?
Anybody else?
I don't think so.
That's it.
I think that's it.
Mel and Ruth will be here, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right, we better keep two for about 15 minutes from now.
Yeah.
Why don't you wait?
It's called Jewish Standard Time.
Let's all decide that we're going to start at 8 o'clock. We'll put it in the bulletin that it's at 7:45.
Okay.
David, they changed the service from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, thinking that the people who came at 10:30 for the Torah would come at 10:30. They're still coming in the door at 11:15, 11:30.
Well, but the truth not as many, you know. I was actually surprised how many people actually do come at 10 o'clock.
But they come because they like, because it's the because of the service. They come because of the 10 o'clock service, not because they have to come to shul because it's Saturday.
Right.
Yeah. It's the difference.
So,
You're trying to tell us you're a little cold?
I am cold today. I guess it's a
not
little
warming.
better.
You're tired and you're
No.
not feeling well.
It's 56 plus 6 degrees.
It's a little better than my office is.
This room is cold.
Yeah.
My office is even colder. So if they 1 minute more, I will.
Supper, what was that?
That's why I said either that or something.
We have got top of the table.
That's a good one. Okay, I think I can work with something. I have to start off with this now.
You're still suffering.
Or again. Was it last week?
Yeah,
Last week?
yeah.
You're right. I remember that. Well, it only lasted like a day or two.
And then it goes away and then
Then
it
it
comes
got
back
better.
with a vengeance.
And yesterday, I remember waking up, feeling like I had muscle aches. or
You were
whatever.
very miserable last week.
Mhm. And then I took a couple of Advil, and I was fine all day. And I woke up this morning feeling a little bit like that, and took a couple of Tylenol, it was fine all day.
A cup of Advil.
Couple of Advil, yeah.
Taken the liquid form or?
No, not a couple.
Oh, a couple, sorry.
Yeah.
If he had taken a liquid cup, he would not be here.
Yeah.
I think. Everybody's favorite cake.
It actually is quite good. I like the chocolate cake here, but this is good.
Oh, I'm ready to talk.
I'm good, I do have some.
I make this at home all the time.
Be tall to lions and do not be ahead to foxes.
You would have.
I like that.
Will be a tail to lions, I say.
You guys have no samples.
Okay.
Any, no what?
I don't know how this happened.
No followers and
I'm
stand.
looking at the YouTube. I have 0 viewers from the beginning, but I already have a thumbs up.
Somebody somewhere likes you a lot.
We're not connecting?
Maybe he tuned on and then turned off.
I don't know. Okay, politeness. Such a good topic.
Yes, it's so nice of you to do this.
Yes.
Should we start thinking of Mr. Rogers?
I
So
guess you-
glad we have this time together. Oh, no, that's somebody else.
Okay, so we have a new rabbi today that is talking. We never read anything about this one.
Nope.
His name was Mattia ben Harash. David, you want to read?
Sure. Rabbi Mattia ben Harash says, "Be the first to greet every person, and be a tail to lions, and do not be a head to foxes."
Okay,
Hmm.
very interesting, right?
Mhm.
So we have basically two different things there. One is be the first to greet every person,
It's easy.
and the other is be a tail to lions and don't be a head to foxes. I guess you could argue that there are three things, three statements, but the last
The last two go together.
kind of, okay? Now,
Does it explain later on what that means, be a tail to lions and not a head to foxes?
yes, of course, it is.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but it's not as easy as it looks like, as we are going to see in a minute.
It never is.
Because and there is one rabbi that is going to address that. It doesn't say something like, be the tail to lions and do not be the heads of rats. Right? It says foxes, which is nothing wrong with foxes, right? I mean, they're not lions,
But they slide.
but they're pretty cool.
But he's talking about two different animals that chase their prey for food and hunt them down.
Yeah, okay.
And
But I think
show no mercy to whatever they think is food.
You will see that they are going in different place than that. But my point is, it's a very weird choice. I mean, I can understand the lion part. I guess back then the lions were considered what we consider the kings of the jungle,
Yes, always.
the king of the predators. So it's an animal that they can walk around without looking, over his shoulder because they have no predators. And there is a technical name for that, with animals that they don't have predators.
You're right, there is a name, I can't remember what it is.
It's like being a T-Rex, right?
Yeah.
The T-Rex has no predators,
Yeah.
but it has a specific name. And foxes, they have to use
Like the way I read it here
Sly
is,
and cunning.
don't be confrontational and don't be too smart, like a smart aleck.
Okay, that might be even another opinion.
Don't be
Yeah, for sure.
confrontational.
Oh,
Yeah,
we'll see.
like be a tail to a lion, and it means just stay in your place
Okay.
and not be a head to foxes. Foxes are pretty smart. So basically, don't play smart and don't play, I don't know.
Okay, I think when it says the tail and the head, the tail means the bottom of something, and the head means being at the top of
Oh, I
something.
see, okay, so in the middle.
So, it's yeah. So,
It's that predator apex. Apex. predator.
Apex. Thank you. It's the one with no predators. So, Lourdes, please, text 2. Let's read about this rabbi, Mattia ben Harash.
As a result of Hadrian's persecution of the 2nd century CE, many of the great rabbis were forced to flee from the land of Israel. Rabbi Mattia bearded the lion. No.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a saying. Bearded the lion in its own den. And you will
Den.
see why it says that.
What does that mean?
You beard the lion in its den, you dare to go into
To
the
go-
land and challenge the
Oh,
lion.
Like you go.
Eddie, I'm
Yeah,
surprised.
I never had that exercise. Hold the lion by the beard.
Yeah, but so you don't use tricks. You don't do anything. You go up front.
Oh,
Why did he say that? You see what happened.
He moved to Rome itself and there established a noted Torah center.
It's interesting. The Romans were killing Jews in Israel, and what did he do? He went to Rome.
Yes, that was the lion.
Yeah, but you see, surprise, surprise, Rome was almost friendly to Jews, because it was one thing is were the generals in the Palestine area, and the other one were the Caesar in Rome. And if you were in Rome, and you were under the protection of the Caesar, so nobody can do anything to you. It's almost like happening these days. I don't know. I was reading the other day an article about the Jews in Russia.
Yes, everybody likes them all of a sudden.
No, the Jews in Russia.
Those
They
are the
are,
oligarchs.
but they are okay. Why? Because the guy Putin, Vladimir Putin, he said, you know, I'm the only one allowed to do something to whatever I want. Nobody else is allowed to do anything. So don't you dare attack any group, because he's a control freak to the point that nobody's allowed to attack the Jews. They're protected. So in Rome, the Caesar were. If you were there, you were under the protection of the Caesar. He's the only. If the Caesar wanted to kill you, he will kill you.
And eventually they.
But if the Caesar didn't want to kill you, nobody was allowed to touch the Jews. And in
Which
fact,
is why-
Judaism in Rome flourished, and they developed their own
It's true.
liturgy.
The Christians had a tough time in Rome, being fed to the lions.
But the Jews, they developed their own traditions. You know, you're probably familiar with Sephardic Jews,
Yeah,
Ashkenazi Jews.
yeah.
But what about the Roman Jews?
Well,
There-
that's before all of this.
They have their own set of traditions, and they are considered as separate. How you call it?
Group?
Group.
Group.
It's separate. They are not Ashkenazi and they're not Sephardic. It's called Italki. Italki Jews, Italian Jews. And they have their own Siddur, their own prayer book, and their own tunes.
They were never very numerous, though.
No, they were never very numerous, but they were always there.
I mean, of all the European countries, they really ended up having the fewest Jews, I think.
And it is closer to Sephardic than Ashkenazi, the traditions.
But so,
I put my hands
Which-
once over on Italki Siddur.
what, do they follow the Babylonian
Babylonian, yes.
tradition? Okay.
Yeah, Ashkenazi were the only one who followed the Jerusalem tradition.
The Jews of Rome enjoyed relative freedom and opportunity at the same time that their brethren in the land of Israel were being persecuted and oppressed. Even in Rome, Rabbi Matthias remained influential among the remaining yeshivot and scholars in the land of Israel, though few of these statements are recorded in the Mishnah or the Talmud. Rabbi Matthias was knowledgeable in medical science and emphasized the halachic principle that the Shabbat must be violated to save a life, even if it is doubtful that the potential victim's life is in danger. His delineation of the four categories of sinners and the steps they must take to receive divine pardon are the basis for many of the laws of the Teshuvah, repentance.
Repentance. It's what we do at the high
Repentance.
holidays, right? On the high holidays we do Teshuvah. We repent. Yeah.
Rabbi Matthias was extremely lenient in the mitzvah between man and God, such as Shabbat, but he was very stringent in the mitzvah between man and the fellow man.
Okay, so this was a very interesting character, and there are many stories about him. The fact that he was visited many times by prominent scholars, and he always had a list of questions
To ask them.
to ask. So whenever they come to visit, he wouldn't forget. And he will have them in front of them and say, okay, I don't understand this rule or this rule or this. So he will, in between the visits of these great scholars, either from Israel or Babylonia, he will keep this.
Was this to formulate his own particular point of view, or to see where he came down on which side? Or was it to expound one? Or was it for his own learning?
For his own learning. Yeah.
No, no Google then.
No, no Google, no Rabbi Google. No. Even though,
No Dr. Google either.
no, I guess, even though, I guess, that's a Yiddish word, right?
Google?
Google?
That's Kegel.
No, Google,
No, that's-
Kegel or Kugel?
Kindle. It's all
Well,
Yiddish.
Kindle is a
Google
reading
and
material,
Kindle.
yeah.
It's Yiddish.
Oh, you're kidding.
Not.
It might be. Wait a minute, wasn't, what's his name? Who started Google?
You're not thinking Gogol Mogul, are you?
One of them was Jewish from
Franklin.
Ukraine, Sergey Brill, or what's his name? One of the Google founders. The other one, it's
I don't know. No, they probably know that you're talking about them, right?
Because they're
Yeah.
listening there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right away, somebody's gonna check it and you'll get an answer
This
in a
is
minute.
Google. It's YouTube. Yeah, it's Google. Okay, so it's when you read about this guy, the way this Rabbi Mattia, you can understand why he wrote what he wrote. At least the first part, where he said, "Be the first to greet every person," because he was extremely careful about people's relationships, and he dedicated his life, I guess, to help people to relate to other people better.
Teaching people more kindness, more chesed between
Yeah.
each other.
And it's interesting because whenever you have these rabbis from the diaspora, when they were outside Israel, you have two schools of thought. One will say, okay, we are in a foreign country, foreign culture, this is the time to be lenient in our fulfillment of the mitzvot, because it's not like you live in Israel and you have everything around you that is conductive towards fulfilling mitzvot. I don't know if you've ever been in Israel.
Yep.
It's
It's
you
easy.
don't even have to think. It's there.
Yeah,
Well, unless you live in Tel Aviv, I guess.
well, that's another story.
Then, when I was in Tel Aviv, I wasn't even sure it was in Israel or not. I had to see that everything was in Hebrew. Oh, I'm in Israel. But you're in Jerusalem.
You don't have to look for a hesher.
Yeah, or Shabbat, everything is easy.
It
You
is.
breathe Judaism there. But when you live outside Israel, and in a place that is not Jewish at all, there were two approaches. One is I build a wall around me,
Or
and
they
the other
were-
one is I become more lenient so I can fit and function in a place that is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily facilitate Jewish practice. And this is what he did. So he was very lenient in the religious observance. I don't have any details about his statement, but the fact that he was the father of the statement that you can break Shabbat to save a life.
So, you know who's sort of like that is Telushkin. The Telushkin that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I mean, there are two. Then the other thing is, the other approach are the Haredim from Poland, that they did all the opposite.
Mhm.
If we don't build a wall around us, we're going to disappear. There is no place for a lenient Judaism. So this guy had that kind of approach, and it's kind of worshipped by Hasidim.
I can see that.
In fact,
To a
it's
point.
you see, when I always for the class I try to search for the grave, and the Hasidim, especially the Breslov, they recommend to try to do your best to try to go to his grave and to pray and to ask for miracles and things, because he was a tzaddik.
I'll tell you about Google.
I'm
You
trying to
wanna hear?
remember if I saw it.
Want to
But
hear
isn't-
about Google?
What about Google?
So, I lost it. The history of, well, here, eventually they changed the name to Google. The name of the search engine originated from a misspelling of the word Google, Googol, the number 1 followed by 100 zeros, which was picked to signify that the search engine was intended to provide large quantities of information.
Okay.
So a G is like for 100, right? And then
Don't you love when something is comes out of mistake?
Well, you know, like the little, the little sticky papers, the yellow stickies, you know, you write a little thing,
I
you stick it
remember.
on, that was a mistake.
I remember
That
this
glue
guy.
was a mistake.
My
This
brother
guy
on
who-
church was a mistake.
Well, yeah.
This guy who won the lottery, right?
Yes.
Because it's,
Yeah.
hello. The lottery, but
Oh, yeah.
this place, you know, you can play 2 or 3 digits
Yes.
and you win, and somebody, and, you know, how do you win? I said, oh, that's very easy. He said, because I have a son that is 3 years old, right? And I have another one that is 8. 3 times 8, 42, I won.
And why not? And why not? Yeah.
Is that a true story?
No.
Oh, you made that up.
So this first part of the first statement, be the first to greet every person. Moses did that.
Why?
No, Abraham did.
Abraham, excuse me.
Okay.
Stood up first.
Yeah, so let's keep
So
going.
is he taking that cue from then, or am I just
We don't
pulling
know.
at threads?
We don't know, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's taking this out of his reality. You have to remember that all the time. That's why I think it's so important to read about the life of the
Second
rabbi.
century, yeah.
When
Okay.
you read about the life of the rabbi, you can understand why they said what they said.
Okay.
Okay, Eddie, please, take 3.
Every person, even non-Jews, whom one meets on the street and people of lower social standing should be greeted cordially. Rabbi Abba Arika, Babylonian 175.
That also, this is the one that is, sometimes you read the Mishnah or the Talmud, is called Rav.
Yep,
Oh, he's around.
When it said Rav said,
so he's
It's,
Rab?
it's Rabbi Abba Arika. And if he said Rebbe, it's Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. So those are things sometimes you have to realize. So again, this is another one. He was born and lived in Babylonia. So it's not a coincidence that this rabbi said, you know, you should say hello to everybody, even non-Jews. Why? If you live in Babylonia, you don't want to offend anybody, right?
This is true.
Most of the time, Jews were reasonably well treated in Babylon, and they had a largely autonomous community. You know, they had their own courts. And
Sometimes, yes, yeah. Let's keep going.
I have a question. What do they mean one meets? When you say,
You see
When you
some-
pass somebody on the street.
or you
If you were walking down the sidewalk and I was walking past you, we were meeting each other
or
on the
somebody
street.
may have
Hello.
contact with you, hello, hi. Or when somebody comes to see you, or you go to see somebody.
I can understand that when you're greeting somebody. But is that what it means? Like, we're talking about anybody.
Anybody.
Anybody, that you
Smile
shouldn't
to
just walk
people.
past somebody,
Okay.
no matter who they are.
Okay,
You
okay,
should
okay.
always say hello.
So let's go back to you see, if you
That's
read
how
the,
I read it.
But if you read the Hebrew,
Aha,
you will say, Avei
funny.
Magdim Bishlom Kol Adam. It's when you say shalom to somebody.
Oh, you're going back to the number 1.
Yeah, it says
Shalom kol adam.
Avei Magdim. Magdim is it comes from the word kodem, which means before.
Maxine, okay.
Okay, so say shalom to the other before the other one says shalom to you.
And then,
The shalom.
and so if you're doing that and reading the rest of that sentence, you are now presuming you are of higher standard of social standard than the person you're meeting.
Why?
Because it says people of lower social standing.
Yeah, well, but that sometimes it's a fact. You could have an important, especially back in the day when this was written, your status was pretty obvious, well known, and important in society. Your status will give you different privileges. It's not the way, well, maybe it is the way it is today.
You were gonna say it's not the way it is today, but sadly,
Yeah,
it
but
sometimes is.
Yeah,
Shouldn't be,
yeah,
but it
everybody
is.
was equal, but some people were more equal than
Than
others.
others, that's right.
So everybody. A lower social standing means, you know, if you're a noble and you happen to be with someone that is, I don't know, a water carrier, just say shalom. Yeah. When many societies, sometimes you are not allowed to talk to somebody who is lower than you, or somebody who's lower than you, for sure, is not allowed to talk to you at all.
Want me to read it?
Text 4, yes.
Okay. The Talmud praises Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai as one who never allowed anyone, even a non-Jew, to greet him first. One must not only love his fellow man, he must also make himself be loved to them. By initiating greetings, one elicits such love.
Okay, so what this rabbi is trying to say, it's trying to explain the words of Rabbi Mattia ben Korach, and the fact that his teaching is that by greeting other people before you and acknowledging that you have a human being in front of you, and as a consequence of that, you are removing a stigma that, you know, Jews don't mingle with anybody that is not a Jew. That's what he was trying to achieve. Remember, he wrote it in Rome. He was living in a foreign country. So it's very interesting that he has to say this. Because there were many other times in history that it's, remember, Jews built a wall around them.
Or the wall was built around
Or,
them.
but as a consequence of that,
Yeah.
that wall was eventually embraced.
Yes.
And I'll tell you something. The fact that you probably heard before, Jews don't knock at doors to convert people. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
But it wasn't true then.
That started as external prohibition. You Jews are not allowed to convert anybody. And then eventually, we embraced it as it was our idea. It came as an external imposition. You're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to own land. You're not allowed to convert anybody. There were times in history there were no conversions to Judaism at all because they were not allowed to do it.
Was it widely done before that prohibition?
Of course, especially in Israel, and especially before
Christian era.
Christianity was well established.
We don't think of it that in those terms, though.
Because Judaism was
Oh, we
extremely
forget it.
popular. And the fact that it was the only religion that it was talking about a Messiah and better times. And doesn't matter that they are the last. They are talking about this great place that you're going to go after you die, where everybody's going to have justice. You know, all these people that they're oppressing you now, they're going to pay eventually when they die.
Because they're not going to Gan Eden.
But who doesn't like that? So conversions were
Everybody is.
pretty easy, and Judaism was open for everybody who wanted to embrace that philosophy. Now, there was a time after Christianity was established that Judaism couldn't compete anymore. Why?
Popularity contest.
But why did Judaism lose the popularity contest?
They already had a Messiah. The Christians had a Messiah.
Okay, but they're still talking about the second coming, right?
The same principles of eternal life and peace.
So you get everything else, right?
The Christians didn't follow all the mitzvahs, so it might have been they might have thought it was easier to live a.
Of course, no
I mean,
circumcision,
ribs.
no circumcision,
Eat
no
ribs.
kashrut,
Yeah.
no Shabbat.
Yeah.
Hooray! Sign me in.
And if you did something bad, you just,
Yeah, okay.
well,
but
those kinds of things didn't exist. It
that
didn't
came-
happen until
that was
a
developed
few
with time.
centuries later.
It depends with the church, but as a philosophy, it was much easier to digest than
Yeah.
Judaism. Judaism is telling you
There were no rules by
Uh,
comparison.
that if you join the clan, you have all these mitzvot that if you don't fulfill them, you're doomed. But even with that, it was popular in the past, and it looks like even if you read the Torah, it's, you move to the land of Israel, you behave like Jews. You're a Jew. Was what the Torah called it ger toshav. Now we use the word ger
Yes.
for convert.
Christianity, those were just like the Jews of modern day. They were the vanguard of sort of socialism. Christianity believed in giving up your material values for community, for the religion, and it's the same thing. It's sort of those same people there. You could see them, and that's why Jews were socialists in the 1880s. That's
for
where
sure.
communism came from. It's the same thing. You were giving up something, usually material, for
the common
community.
good, the common weal.
I want to say something else. The idea of forming a wall around us is really Torah. I mean, you've been taught this. You may have taught us this. I mean, what does kashrut do? But it separates us from the people that live around us. We can't eat at the same table. Remember when Joseph couldn't eat at the same table as Elijah didn't have kashrut then. So
Joseph,
that
no,
was
it
different.
didn't come- it didn't come until
Forget that
Moses.
comment. That's wrong. But the Torah separates us because you have to eat at a different table than other people. So you have to be separate. And so the idea of forming a wall, that is what we do.
And in modern
but
times
don't
outside
forget-
of Israel, we do that.
Oh,
with
but
the
don't
Eruv and various other.
Don't forget that
mechanisms.
what you said the Torah says is nothing more than rabbinic writings. The Torah doesn't say anything.
No, but the Torah says we have to keep kosher.
No.
The Torah
Doesn't use the
tells
word
us what
kosher.
we eat.
The
It
Torah
tells you what
gives
you cannot
the
eat.
Torah gives you a list of things that you can eat. Period.
That you
Right.
can and cannot.
So then how do you live in a society
remember-
that is pork-based? Because remember,
But it's-
they didn't have cattle then, I don't think, like they.
No, they have goats and lamb,
Yeah.
that you can eat. The Torah said you can eat that. I'm pretty sure many people back in the day knew how to do shechita. Even though the Torah doesn't mention shechita, the cut, the special cut you have to use to slaughter an animal, the Torah doesn't mention it by name.
A good shepherd would have slaughtered his animal, as
But the
dispatched it as painlessly as possible.
But no, but it's not just painless. What the Torah says that is, if you kill an animal, you have to drain all the blood.
Blood,
yes.
yeah.
How do you, what kind of cut you need to make on an animal to guarantee that the animal will bleed as fast as possible?
For the jugulars, yeah,
And what is shechita?
yeah, right.
So you don't really need God to tell you what it is. That's what the rabbi said, that the shechita, the cut, was oral law transmitted from God to Moses, which everybody, according to the historians, everybody knew back then, and that was the way of doing it, the way of cutting the animals, slaughtering the animal. The fact that Muslims do it the same way. It's called
but-
death by exsanguination.
Yes.
And that's why, for example, somebody from the Sikh religion, they're not allowed to eat kosher or halal. Even though they are allowed to eat meat, they are not allowed to eat an animal that died by exsanguination.
Apparently, the reason for that is that at one time when the Sikh religion was first established, India was divided into various principal countries. So apparently, some of the Sikhs were persecuted by the Muslims. That's
Yeah.
how they.
So they always.
So the matter, I read all this because I like this vegetarian Indian restaurant that is in the Maples. It's called Punjab Sweet House, and it was one time that I went there and they had this
Excuse me.
how you call it, like a pamphlet with information about the Sikh religion. That there is one chapter dedicated to the meat, and it says there some Sikh are vegetarian, but many eat meat, but they are not allowed to eat animals that they were killed by exsanguination. I said, oh, okay,
Now
this
I
is kosher,
understand.
because Jews, we do have to eat an animal that was killed by exsanguination. And that's what we call the shechita.
I just want to go back to what I said before, because I don't agree. I think the Shabbat, circumcision, and kashrut
Kashrut, in a sense, dietary restrictions,
all separate us from the communities that we were in.
and makes us very difficult to join.
That's right, and
Yeah.
that's the wall. And so, well, that's the wall.
Yeah, but if we go back to this, it's like, it's, I would say this is the time that Judaism was still being created.
It was still evolving.
It was still evolving.
Mhm.
It wasn't even clear about the not mixing of bird with meat, with milk, and all stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I guess many rabbis decided to go to the stringency side instead of keeping it simple.
Mhm.
Don't you think it became more stringent over time?
Yeah, and on top of that, of course, all the separation of the waiting time between meat and milk and thing is generation after generation, and is a product of the diaspora.
Yeah.
Yes,
Did you say death by examination?
exsanguination.
Draining the blood.
Drain blood. Exsanguinate.
How do you say it?
Exsanguination.
EXSANG. Sang is blood in French.
Yeah.
Sanguine, exsanguination.
Oh, okay, thank you. And what is it? Draining the blood?
Draining,
It
killing by
basically
draining
means
the blood.
bleeding to death.
Thank you.
But don't forget, there's the anthropologist in me coming out.
And
At
how-
that time, they were amazing empirical scientists, generationally of watching and learning about what to plant and what not to plant, and how to bring an animal to maturity. They understood what they were doing over a long, but it took years to evolve this.
How did the rule that even if you have just by exsanguination, how did the rule that you can't stun an animal, where did that start? Because that seems to be a problematic for Jews and Muslims in some countries,
Because the Judaism, the animal has to be cut with a shechita.
Yeah, but.
Why not stun it
but
first and
what
then
happens
cut it?
here in stunning it first and then cutting it?
Because the animal has to be unblemished.
But would stunning be a blemish? Wouldn't that just?
It
Yeah,
could
you-
either
before you bring it.
break or bruise the animal in such a way.
Yeah.
And
Although it looks that there were some kind of ways around.
In
like-
modern Canadian poultry plants, they are all stunned, and and they're all killed the same way. And if there's a rabbi there, then it becomes kosher. If there's an imam there, that same meat is halal. But the killing method is exactly the same.
And yet, as a kid, I grew up in my grandparents' home, and there was a chicken coop in the backyard. And I have to tell you, I hated those chickens with a passion. But, but having said that, every once in a while, when one was no longer productive, my Baba would say to me in Yiddish, Razel, nehmen some shochet. And I would take the chicken by the legs, and I would walk it 4 doors down the street to Mr. Brickman, and he'd tell me, Razel, and he'd point, and I'd go to the front of the yard, and I'd hear, "Ah!" and a loud thwack, and then I would take this bleeding creature down the street, still bleeding, and my Baba and I would sit on the back steps and get it ready, so.
The chickens in Canada are 100% bled.
But,
Yeah, but you know
They're
what?
bled,
Completely.
but they're stunned first, you
yeah,
said.
Yes.
I don't
I worked in
think,
the-
I don't think Mr. Brickman stunned it.
I worked in that for
He
30 years.
dispatched it, he dispatched it on a wood stump in the backyard.
You stun it by go smash?
No,
That's-
it's-
That's what they had in those,
It's
those
called
YouTube
it's
things.
called water stunning.
Yeah.
So what happens is the
Oh,
top shekel
really?
has the negative
In a
current.
chicken
The
factory.
water has a positive. It just touches it and the chicken doesn't even.
They electrocute it.
Hmm?
They electrocute it.
Is there
It's
veneer?
very, very mild. You can put your hand in it, you won't feel much, but just enough to
But if
stun
you were chicken, you would
It's
notice.
alive, completely alive, but just stunned. Like, just stunned, like, oops, and by then it's already cut.
Oh, I see, they don't kill it, I see they just.
No killing.
They just stun it, but not when, like, when you smash their head and he's out cold, they just stun for a second.
But I
Still
also-
When they're
I
talking about
heard-
stun guns for cattle, though, that's an
Those
entirely
are
different
those
thing,
actually-
that's something,
Those stun guns actually make a hole in the.
yes, that's right, in the forehead between, that's an
That's
entirely
the one that
different
you,
thing.
you can't do.
Yes,
But I heard cases of, like kosher hunting, that they will, like the arrow will pierce the body and then the hunter will come and kill
Yes.
the shechita, which I don't think is
Mm.
technically kosher, but might be a,
but all hunters do that, no matter how
They
they
can
kill the
bypass.
animal, they hang it and make,
Yeah, but,
How
slit
do
its
they-
throat and bleed it right away.
How do the,
All hunters do
how
that.
does the shochet manage to hold down a big animal like a cow or a bull? Isn't that pretty dangerous? I mean, how do
They
they?
don't hold them down, Eddie, they put them in a lock, they put them in a chute,
Oh.
and it's,
no, but then they hang it.
and
They
then
hang it before they kill it?
No,
No,
after,
after.
right after, right after the cut.
Right after the cut, it's quite
Yeah.
mechanized now, Eddie, it's.
Has there, I know this is beside the point from Politeness, but has there been any move either by the Committee of Jewish Law and Standards or even by some Orthodox authorities to reconsider the law against stunning, especially if it turns out that it would reduce the suffering of the, that's a.
There's a whole argument
controversial
about
issue.
that, but I don't think it's ever been resolved.
Has anybody has there been any move to reconsider the rule by some rabbinic authorities?
I don't think so, I haven't read anything about it. There were just some complaints about the cruelty within the factories.
Yeah.
There was a hidden camera.
That was a
the
huge
kosher.
issue
Yeah.
in the United States a few years ago. I think the one company lost its hesher because of its method.
Well, there's a new code of standards, of ethical standards.
Yeah.
for
3 seconds.
But there is a
Pardon me?
controversy.
3 seconds. Has to be dead by.
But there is a controversy in Europe
I don't-
about ritual slaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Yeah,
countries.
yeah.
There is a
trying-
controversy
Some
in
people
Europe.
want it banned, whether
Yeah,
it's,
there is.
whether it's bona fide animal rights people or
There is.
maybe anti-Muslim people, and of course, even if the.
No, I think it's going hand in hand with anti-circumcision. I know that doesn't sound like a good pair, but it seems to be in the same kinds of
They don't-
communities.
They don't like knives. Okay, text 5.
They like marijuana.
Human dignity must be respected and honored in both word and deed. Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students died in a calamitous plague because they did not show each other the proper respect. See,
That's the Talmud, Yevamot 62b.
How do you say it?
It's a Yevamos. Yevamos is in Ashkenaz, but it's Yevamot.
Yevamos, 62b. Even enemies should be greeted, Midrash Shmuel. Often their enmity is softened by the disarming expression of concern and respect that is conveyed by a greeting. Conversely, the snub of failure to say hello, or much worse, to respond to a greeting, can cause animosity. Thus, Rabbi Maktim might be rendered. Take the initiative.
That's the Hebrew
Yeah.
at the beginning. Have a magazine.
Rabbi Maktim. Take the initiative, Bishlam, in pursuing peace with all men. Don't wait for your antagonist to approach you. Extend the branch of peace to him first. He will eventually respond in kind.
Aha. So this rabbi has a totally different approach. He said that it's nothing about greeting. But what it's saying, if you go back, Rabbi Mattia ben Karash Omer, Havei Magdim Bishlom Kol Adam. Be the first to pursue peace
Yep.
with everybody. It's not about greeting, it's about pursuing peace. Actually, this rabbi, what was his name? Rabbi Chaim Yehuda
Baruchkovich.
He is taking it literally. Shalom as peace, not shalom as hello. That's what I like. This is everybody's taking a different approach here. Text C,
6.
6. I like this rabbi, Rabbi Beryl Wayne. I put a lot of him today.
To to greet people in a friendly manner is more than just good social manners. It reflects an optimistic and friendly view of life. The Torah unalterably opposes sadness and melancholy as a psychological state of being. Accustoming oneself to greeting people, even strangers, and not only Jews, is a method for developing this positive psychological attitude towards life and its inherent challenges. I am continually shocked by the experience of wishing someone a good Shabbos and receiving no response. Sometimes I am rewarded with a blank stare, like what's your problem stare. But many times the person just walks by me as though I didn't exist, and my greeting was never extended. Not only is this rude, it flies in the face of what Torah behavior should be. Rabbi Mattia urges Jews to be the initiators of greetings and courtesy. He wanted us not to stand on ceremony, not to feel that others were obligated to somehow to greet us first before we responded in kind. But he certainly never imagined that there would be those who would completely ignore greetings of others when extended. A cheerful good morning greeting is beneficial to both the giver and the recipient.
Okay.
Weren't there some people, though, I don't know where I read it, that, I don't know if it's in Roman times, that some people of supposedly higher classes objected when somebody who they thought was lower greeted them first?
Yeah,
You know,
there were
sometimes-
rules about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this guy is obviously very contemporary, if he's saying, what's your problem?
Yeah, and I think also what he's saying is that, you know, at the same time, knowing the rabbi, he probably thinking, don't be an idiot at the same time, right? Use your brains. You should know the situation, but in general, that's what you should do, greet everybody.
This is sort of the same concept as who benefits when you give somebody, the giver or the receiver.
That's right.
And it's the same thing, you know, when you say hello to somebody that on the street, and you get something positive out of that. Well, that's what he's saying.
And
I
they
agree
get
with that.
something
And they get
positive
some-
too.
Right.
But isn't there is somewhere in Pirkei Avot, there's a thing that says, whatever good deed that you do it because you do it, not because you're expecting something
Yeah,
in
well,
return.
that's-
Is this not similar? You greet someone,
But it's-
not because you expect a greeting back, but you greet someone because it is the right thing to do,
Yeah. I think it's
whether it's hello or good Shabbos or.
it is presented as an act of chesed.
Yeah.
It's a kindness.
But isn't there a good feeling by greeting someone?
I think so.
I think you get a good feeling when you say Shabbat Shalom to someone.
Yeah.
There's nothing negative about that, there's only positive
It's very
feelings
special.
about
Yeah,
I
but
think
it-
it's very special.
But this rabbi is saying sometimes, you know, that he's
I-
doing his
I-
best, and
I-
sometimes
I think I have to
he
admit,
feels
I've
like-
never had that experience. Of course, I've never walked down the street and just said Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
I
You
think
know,
he's
on Portage
suggesting that
Avenue on
in
a
some
Saturday morning.
places, people just are so matter of fact about it.
Is he from
I
Los
expect he-
Angeles?
I don't know, he's from the United States.
Yeah.
That's for sure. He's a very
I
famous
think-
rabbi in these days. You can watch his videos on YouTube, and he wrote books. It's a very cool one. He has a very.
I think this is
he-
a New
he's-
York attitude.
He's like the same kind of club of Tulushkin.
Oh, yes, okay.
He's a modern rabbi. He might be Aish Torah.
Ask Rabbi Google, David.
As
I-
a school
I-
teacher, I used to stand at the door for the students as they came in and greeted them individually as they entered the room, and they all greeted me. And I am, this day, I am having students that I can't even remember, but they were remembering me. It's amazing.
Yes.
That,
Yeah, remember when Wolfson came?
Yes,
Well, Ron
Ron Wolfson, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That when he did it, he came 30 minutes before the service, and he stand at the door greeting everybody walking in.
Oh, yeah, right, that's right.
Yeah.
He had everybody get up and turn around to the
He's from
person able
Chicago, but I'm not sure.
to walk around and say hello to various people.
I remember I tried to do this, when I was invited to, remember the clergy swap with
Yes.
Edmonton?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I went there like 20 minutes before the service.
And yet I can
But
remember,
there was nobody. I ended up talking to the guard, the security guard, because the president wasn't there. There was nobody. The service started at 9 o'clock. So 2 minutes to 9, two people came. One was the one who's supposed to daven Shachrit, sing the first part of the service. And the other one was a lady, which I said, hello.
who are you and what are
Like
you
that.
doing here?
And she went to sit in one of the last seats, and then we started the service. We didn't have a meeting in the beginning.
Oh, you could have been at Ashkenazi then. That's how
It's,
services start all the
it's-
time.
I said, here is me trying to, do a good boy, play good boy, and coming early and greeting everybody. Was nobody to greet.
He was born in Chicago, and where he practiced law for a number of years.
Law.
And then
Who's this?
went to Rabbi White,
Rabbi,
then went to Miami, and then
Number
basically
6.
to New York, where he spent a good deal of his time, and then to Jerusalem, where he spent.
Oh,
That's gotta be a New York thing. Well, maybe Chicago.
okay.
New York for sure.
He was a good morning. 7.
The appropriate personality trait to be called upon when dealing with peers is anava. The English word humility does not do justice to this concept. Anava means that one considers other people important while not assessing his own importance. It is a trait that is fundamental to the pursuit of peace. It is an act of anava to initiate a greeting to another person. It demonstrates that he considers others to be important. We should not wait for the other person to extend greetings to which we will then respond, because it treats him as an inferior. Ordinary people should be important enough to us that we wish to encourage their friendship, and it goes without saying that we should not avoid their friendship. Those who are the first to extend greetings are by nature people who seek harmonious relationships. Conversely, those who only respond to others' greetings do not demonstrate a genuine concern for social harmony. Rabbi Judah Owen Ben Bezel.
This is the
Maharal.
Maharal of Prague.
Maharal of Prague.
Famous guy. Okay, text 8.
It is better to be a follower of the righteous, from whom one can learn, than to be a leader of common people.
Thank you. This is Rashi. This is we are already moving to the second part of the statement here. Okay, better to be the tail of the lion and not the head of the foxes. So how is Rashi explaining that passage from the Mishnah? It is better to be a follower of the righteous, the lion, from whom one can learn to be the leader of common people.
Even the paragraph before that was alluding to the same thing, the lion's tail and the fox's head, like says,
The second paragraph is an
on
actor.
7,
Yeah,
I can't find it, but it's the same train of thought.
Okay, so this is the way Rashi understands it. Okay, when he said lion means righteous, foxes mean common people. Sometimes some people they like that. They like to be the leader of a group of losers, just to feel important. At least I have a group
I'm
of
the king
people.
of something.
Yeah, I'm the
I'm
king
the
of
ki-
something.
I'm the king of
I have a
something.
group of people who think that I'm great. Yeah, but who's around you, right?
We have so many examples in our world right now.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
You're right, it is not funny. It's,
But a great leader wouldn't think of his followers as losers, though. They'd try to develop.
Well, but that's my point. But some people they don't care. They just want
Yeah.
some group of people to clap after whatever you say. It's sad, but that's the way it is. It's well sometimes to me the rational, the principle should be You know, if you feel that you are the smartest person of your group, maybe it's time for you to expand and to try to find other people who will challenge you.
But then that takes somebody out of their comfort zone. And, you know, this person, you know, he's very happy being a leader and is the big fish in the small pond as opposed to a small fish in the big pond. I mean, that's, you know.
It's all about the mindset. Text 9.
Ego. One should prefer to be the disciple of wiser people rather than the mentor of inferiors. The former will only benefit him, while the latter will be to his spiritual detriment. And that's the Rambam.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much a fox and lion thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, because the thing is, even if you're a teacher, you still have to be a learner.
One would hope.
You will never reach a point where you say, you know what, I know everything, now it's time for me to be the leader.
True.
That's why how do you call in Hebrew in the yeshiva world to a wise sage or students? That is
You'd say Rab, you call him a Rab?
you call it Talmid Chacham.
A Talmud Chacham.
What is a
Okay.
Talmid Chacham? How do you translate
A
it?
smart aleck.
Smart student.
Well, sometimes you
But
well,
it could
in a
also be
yeshiva, in a
translated-
yeshiva, yes, but
Could also be translated as the student of a Chacham.
Okay.
You are the student of a wise person. If you want to call somebody the student of a wise person, you will call it Talmid Chacham, the student of a Chacham.
yeah.
But it's interesting how Hebrew sometimes could have multiple meanings, but also means, smart student. Smart student or student of a smart, it's pronounced the same, Talmid Chacham.
If you live in a Yiddish world, which is the world that I grew up in, you could call someone, look at him, he thinks he's such a Talmud Chacham, you know?
Yeah, I
In other
know.
words,
I know.
I don't know if
in
there's
the
that
real-
same
No
thing
one
in
ever
Hebrew.
said that to me.
I wasn't looking at you, I was
Well,
looking
but
past
in the
you.
real world, I know Talmid Chacham means a smart student.
No, it means he's
But-
a smart aleck, he thinks
Yes,
he's a
but-
Talmud
okay.
Chacham.
So there are
You know.
three contexts here.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
In yeshiva, Talmid Chacham is the student of a
Yes.
smart person. In
No, but-
Tel Aviv is smart student,
No.
and in Yiddish is a smart fellow.
Can be,
Can be.
not always, but can be.
Smart pants. Okay.
You know, if you're a person that loves to learn, there's nothing more exciting than to be in the presence of one,
Of someone
who's someone that's really great. And, occasionally we get people like that, that pass through and you get to talk to them and you realize, a lot of great people really got to be great. And to listen to them is really inspiring.
Yeah, but
It
there are
is
many
true.
people that they go to this place and they see how people admire these other people, right? The people admire the sage and they say, I want to feel the same. So they don't care to whom, but they say, I want to be in a situation where people are going to treat me like I'm treating that other guy. That is being the head of the foxes instead of the greater the sage, the closer he sat to the center. When a member died, everyone moved up a seat. The last seat, then empty, was filled by the highest ranking member of a lower court. Thus, the new member, who was formerly a head of foxes, now became the tail of lions. It is preferable to be the least distinguished member of an elite group than to be the most distinguished member of a lesser group. Even though one who leads his inferiors stands to gain in prestige by comparison to them, it is still preferable for him to dwell among more illustrious people. And you will see in text 11, again, Rabbi Wein is going to say it in different words, in a more modern way.
It is certainly more worthy and profitable to be a utility player on a major league sports team than to remain a perennial minor leaguer.
You can feel the New York blood there.
Yeah. One
Yeah,
should
for
always
sure.
search for friends and teachers who are greater than oneself. This is how one can grow intellectually and spiritually. The constant search for self-improvement elevates one's sights and social framework in life. On the other hand, remaining contented and stagnant in a group that does not aspire to greater accomplishments, especially in spiritual life, guarantees mediocrity, self-righteousness, and zero growth. Life is a ladder, and we must always try every person and be a tail to lions rather than a head to foxes.
Yeah. I like his phrase here. It's better to be a utility player on a major league sports team than to remain a perennial minor leaguer. I think that's perfect in modern terms,
Yep.
in
for
a
sure.
way that everybody will understand, at least in North America. You say the same in South America, doesn't make any sense, because we don't have.
Soccer players.
Yeah, it's different, right? You
There
don't
are
have-
no utility players in
and
soccer, are there?
you don't have major league and minor league. It's
Yeah.
split
I
differently.
think he's speaking specifically about baseball as opposed to any other game, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just how I read it.
Don't you get the feeling, though, there's something very elitist about this? So, I mean, you see the group that you're in as the best, and that's why you want to be in it, and that group isn't.
No,
I-
what it
I-
means is never feel that you already reached the top. You really want to be in another group that is better. Well, but don't you realize that if you move on to the other group, you're
You're
not
gonna
going
at
to
the
be
top anymore.
the top pitcher or batter? Because, you look at the numbers of these other people. If you go there, you might not even play every week. Doesn't matter, because the challenge for you is going to make you even better. Instead of staying in something that is easier, but you're the number one.
I have an issue with this. I think it really is elitist. It's separating
It is.
people into groups that are better and groups that are worse. And I could see, and even if you're talking about spiritual things, and you're somehow you're moving yourself into that group that's better, and you're looking down on the group
No,
that's
but
worse.
the difference is the why. Why do you want to move on to the other group?
To better yourself, even if you're not the best anymore, just strive for higher. That's the human nature.
Yeah, it's
You
not just.
strive to go. Even losers, if you ask them, they'll tell you, well, I would like to do this, that. It's just a matter of having the will and the means to do that.
Yeah.
But intrinsically, every human being wants to better.
No, but that's the problem. I think that's the problem. That's not true. Not everybody wants to do that.
Well,
Some people get comfortable whatever they are, and we're about to study that on Pesach, when the Jews didn't want to leave Egypt because they were okay. They already made their lives there. So, but it's God telling them.
It may
but-
not be wonderful, but at least we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, but
and
God was
if we
telling
go
them,
off the edge of the
you
earth, who
can do
knows what's
so
there.
much better than this. You have so much potential. I didn't create you to be a slave. But unfortunately, they didn't know anything else. They
They
couldn't
forgot
leave
what anything else
They
was.
couldn't leave that slave mentality behind because they didn't have
Anything to compare it to?
the lion to look at and say, at least I could be the tail of the lion, because there was no lion for them. So that's why I believe it took another generation to understand what being free people meant. When they were born and they were looking at their parents and they said, what do you do with your life? You have so much potential. Don't you realize that? Don't you see it? And the answer is no, they couldn't see it. They were stuck on their little box and they couldn't see their potential.
How do you make them see it?
You can't.
Well,
They have
sometimes
to
you
want
can. I think that's why the rabbis say, we read in the Haggadah, Pesach every year, Bechol dor vador, Bechol dor vador, Chayav adam lirot et atzmo keilu hu, Keiluhu yatsa mitzrayim. It said in every generation, you have to look at yourself like you're the one leaving Egypt, right? But the funny thing is, I wouldn't even translate Mitzrayim as Egypt, because Mitzrayim is much more than Egypt. Mitzrayim comes from the word Metzarim, that it means a narrow place. So it's-
Confinement?
Sorry?
Confining? So Mitzrayim is
Yeah.
confining?
Kol olam kulo gesher. What is the next word? Kol olam kulo gesher. What is the next word?
I don't know. You're the rabbi.
Tsar meod. Gesher tsar meod. It's a famous song, right? The whole world
Not at your table.
is a narrow tsar, is a narrow bridge.
Wait, I don't remember, that's in the Pesach Seder?
No. I'm using it's the
Oh.
same word, the same etymology. Mitzrayim, Metzarim,
Yes,
Tsar. It's the same. Tsures.
okay.
Tourist.
Trouble.
Tsur is the same root. It's something that is.
Confining.
It's like squeezing you. But so what it says every year in Pesach is you have to find ways to leave behind that metzer, that narrow place. All you have to do is to believe that you can expand. That limit is not real. Or yeah, well, okay, it's real, but you have what it takes to get beyond the limits of that narrow place. That's what Pesach is. Because if we keep imagining year after year, okay, I will meditate that I'm leaving Egypt and I have a sack with all the things, but that might be a beautiful exercise, but to what extent? We're not in Egypt anymore. You have to translate that into something that is actually useful for your life right now. So Egypt, I take it as, not as an Egypt, as Mitzrayim, a narrow place, and we all have things that they are limiting us, and we have to figure out ways to expand ourselves so we can break free from those limits.
Get away from the bondage that's holding you back.
Yeah, for whatever that is. Different people will be different way. But the minute you get comfortable where you are, the minute you stop growing. The minute you start growing is the minute you stop living.
It's the minute you start, it's when you start, that's when you start to die.
Yeah, when you believe that you have nothing else to do. It's a sad reality, and I believe that leaving Mitzrayim means that. It's the joke. I don't know if I told you this before. The guy, the fisherman, who was getting all this fish out of the river, and the small fish he will keep, and the big fish he will throw it back to the river. And it was a guy looking at him and said, "What are you doing? Why are you keeping the small fish and throwing away the big one? It's supposed to be the opposite, right?" And the fisherman said, "Oh, that's easy. All I have is a 9-inch fry pan. And it belonged to my grandmother, so I don't want to change it."
It's like the roast story. It's like the roast story and all the others, Why do you always make it this? He said, because my mother always did it. Why did she always do it? Because the pan was only this big.
Yeah.
And it was this big.
And then you realize all you need is a new pan.
Yeah.
And then you can fry big fish. It's not that difficult, but it belonged to my grandmother. There was always like that. My family always did it like that.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time in society that many people sometimes they struggle to break, for example, poverty cycles, because they believe that's the way it is. They were born poor, and
And there's nothing else.
because they look at their parents, they look at their grandparents, the great grandparents, and they were all like that. So I can't break it. I can't leave this place because that's the way it is. And usually that's why we say in society, so sometimes the way to improve in society is through education.
Yeah.
That's what it means, through education. Because education is the one that's going to expand your
Expand
view.
knowledge.
You're going to open a book and you're going to travel without leaving your place. You're going to travel to other places to see what other people do. You will learn about other possibilities. It's and we have an opportunity to study that every year when we celebrate Pesach. Every year. Yeah. Okay, next.
By choosing the metaphor of a fox, an animal of modest size and bearing, rather than that of an even smaller animal, the Mishnah is insisting that we not even content ourselves with becoming the head of a mediocre group of people symbolized by the fox, which, although not as big as a lion, is clever enough, enjoys a middling presence of its own.
Ah, beautiful. What it says here is, why did the guy pick lion and fox? Because the fox is not a rat. It's not a cockroach. The fox in this context represents mediocre. Somebody will say, I'm okay where I am. I'm not in Egypt. I'm not a slave, right? I'm comfortable. That's it, but you have to realize sometimes that you can do more. When I say do more, it means that you have to realize sometimes that you came to this world to do more. It's all about realizing our place in this world and what we're supposed to do. And sometimes I believe we don't reach that goal because we settle with good enough. This is a fight that I have all the time with my coworker. Don't settle with good enough when you have what it takes to be excellent. It's good enough, you will like it. But why would you even think that way? If you can do it even better, you can make a difference. Yes.
Sometimes a person can accomplish more by being, quote, the head of the fox and the tail of the lion. I mean, if he goes to a higher place, if he's just one of the hundreds of people there, he might not be able to accomplish anything. Or take the baseball analogy. If he's a utility player, maybe he might not do much, but if he's the coach, even of a minor league, a lot of coaches have done great things, not only in the sport, but they've mentored people, took them out of, convinced them not to be a criminal, or even in politics.
Yeah, but I think
But they've trained.
what it said is, that's great, but if you have what it takes to be a coach in a big league, why will you stay in a minor league because you say, well, this is comfortable, you know?
But you say to be a coach in a big league, but being a tail doesn't necessarily mean a coach. It could be a lower, even in politics. We could consider Parliament to be higher than a provincial legislature. But if a person, if he or she was elected to Parliament, and they'd be a perennial backbencher, they couldn't be in the cabinet, they might accomplish a lot less than being the premier of a small province, or even the mayor of a middle-sized city. You know, I mean, a mayor can do a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just saying that doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes you can reach your highest potential by being, as you say.
Okay, but that's your higher. I think this is talking about never settle with good enough if you have the potential to go beyond that. It's the reason why you are. It's not about where you are, it's why you are there, why you want to stay. If you want to stay to achieve, because you feel that you can make a difference, that's one thing. And I don't believe that is a fox case. Because fox and lion is relative. It's a relative term. But if you have what it takes to be a Lions League, and nevertheless you decide to stay in Fox League because it's easier, but you know you have what it takes to make a difference in the next level, and nevertheless you don't. That's the problem. You know when sometimes foxes are necessary as well.
And again, there's always a risk-benefit analysis. I mean, sometimes a person could be, there could be maybe a slight possibility of getting ahead with a higher thing, but at least I mean, in the academic community, with a person who's got professor, who's got tenure, at, let's say a middle university,
University
to
of
give up tenure to maybe
Let's not
be
even go there.
a guest lecturer for a year at Yale, you know, I mean, or Harvard, or, you know, it might not be worth his while. I mean, if he's got tenure, he can still do a lot of great work, he can still do a lot of publishing, you know, and so, I mean,
Can get his pension or not, because they usually don't give up, they die on the professorial chair.
mm,
There's no room for the young guys
Well,
to.
Tenure isn't given out very easily
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could spend the rest of your life as an associate without ever rising any higher.
And there are cases that people reach
But it's
tenure,
true.
and that's the last day they actually work. And they
Oh, yes.
but even if they've got tenure, they can still be removed from cause, and if they neglect their duties.
It happened.
Really?
It happened
I don't
everywhere.
think so.
It
Teddy.
happened, it
No,
happened
no,
with
no.
professors with
That's just
tenure.
unfair tales.
It happened with, when certain rabbis reach the point that they get the life contract,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and that's the last day they work. It
It's
happened
like
all the time.
Government workers,
Sorry?
like the government workers.
Yeah, but I know cases of
Some,
rabbis
not all.
that the communities gave them the life contract because of all the hard work, all the passion, all what they did for the community. And they have a great celebration, and the day after, game over.
Yes. Yes.
Why is that?
Sorry?
Well, people
Why
have,
is that?
Okay, that's gone.
Because they settle. They prefer to be comfortable over being productive.
It's called, I don't have to work hard anymore, I have it all, and now I can laugh.
They get paid while they retire.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's read the next one. We have a couple of interesting things on the next text. Who is the reader?
Eddie, Edward?
Which number?
13.
What? 13?
Avot 3:16, Rabbi Ishmael says, "Be yielding to an elder, pleasant to a youth, and greet every person with joy."
Okay.
I would like to comment on that.
Okay, we'll have a chance. Let's read first who was Rabbi Ishmael.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, who did turns it now?
Number 14.
14. Yeah.
I was gonna comment on that, but I'll read it first.
Who was Rabbi Ishmael?
He was the grandson of Rabbi Ishmael, a high priest at the end of the Second Temple era. He was one of the 10 martyrs murdered by the Romans.
Okay, so we have here a problem. Some people confuse the two. They were both called Rabbi Ishmael, but the other one is usually mentioned as Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol. Okay? And this is
Okay.
their grandson of that Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol.
The Rabbi Ishmael of our Mishnah was a colleague of Rabbi Akiva and a great scholar. His categorization of the oral law, 13 principles of of the written Torah remains the accepted basis of Talmudic interpretation.
You will read this if you open the morning prayers on the Siddur, right before Kaddish the Rabbanan, you will have the text. Rabbi Ishmael Omer b'shlosh midot haTorah nidrashet v'heilu en. That's the way it starts. It said, Rabbi Ishmael said, through 13 principles that Torah could be understood. And it started with Kal Vachomer, which means even more so, and so forth. We have different Kal Vachomer, Zera Shaba, and it has 13 rules, okay, to analyze the Torah. And he was the creator of those 13 rules. Before that was also, there is another one that is Hillel wrote, and there were the 7 rules of Hillel. But this one get the 13 rules, and it became more popular than Hillel, and that's the one universally applied, the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael.
He was a prisoner of Rome as a child, apparently destined for slavery, and was redeemed from captivity through the efforts of Rabbi Yehoshua
Ben Hanani, so it's a typo there.
Ben Hanani, The original Ishmael was Abraham's first son by Hagar, who was banished.
Remember the story of
Yeah,
Ishmael?
yeah, yeah.
They were both banished, actually.
Then he was redeemed. Okay, the original Ishmael, first son by Hagar, who was banished. The use of his name in Jewish families, therefore, especially in the families of high priests and rabbinic scholars of the Mishnah, strikes us today as strange and disconcerting.
Okay, do you know anybody in the Jewish world named Ishmael?
No.
So doesn't it sound weird to you that this great rabbi is called Ishmael?
But that's because there weren't any Muslims then. And there are now, because we think of Ishmael as the Muslim
Yeah,
side of
that's interesting. That's
That's
what it
true.
says. Back in the time, Ishmael was a kosher name. Why?
However, in biblical, the second temple times, the name was common among the Jews in accordance with the tradition that Ishmael was a righteous person at the time of his death. He was the ancestor of the Arab nation, and with the rise of Islam in the 7th century CE, the name Ishmael was no longer used by Jewish families.
Interesting. Okay, it's very interesting. That before Ishmael was never connected to anything negative. Ishmael was one of the sons of Abraham, so his name was totally kosher. Yes. You want to say something?
Yeah, but I was just wondering, are there no Jews anymore that named Ishmael?
No, it's not used. No, not that I know of. Yeah.
I
It's
can
the
imagine
same
the
that-
look on the rabbi's face at the Pinyamin.
It's the same that nobody will call the son Korach,
or Jesus.
Because it's
but
not-
Jesus is Yeshua. But it was Yeshua.
Was it?
No, that's Joshua, yes.
Joshua.
Jesus.
Sorry?
I mean, Jesus, but Jewish people wouldn't use that name.
No.
So let me think other
Korach.
Korach or
Haman?
or Haman or Bilam,
Or Amalek.
Amalek. People won't use those names, right? Because they were related from the Torah. They're connected to something negative. But Ishmael was never connected to anything negative.
And the original Muslims, Muhammad, his views in many respects, and even modern Islam, in many respects, Islam and halakha, Sharia law and halakha, have certain similarities. And I remember reading that there was one prominent rabbi, I forget his name, who was a settler, but he was very friendly with the Muslims and the Arabs there, and he said Islam is a, quote, gut kosher religion, no
Yes,
trace of idolatry. you know,
absolutely.
so-
It's a big
So
problem.
one could consider, in some respects, Muslims as honorary Jews and
But
Jews as
there was-
honorary Muslims.
There was never a problem
Theoretically,
with
there are
Islam.
brothers, but they don't
But
act that way.
There was never a
Some of
problem
them do actually.
there was never a problem from Judaism to Islam. Even if you talk to the settlers, it's not that you know when they will say that if I talk to some settlers that they are full of hate, and
They
they
are.
will say, I hate the Palestinians. When they say that, they are not saying I hate Muslim Palestinians, because they are Muslim, they are Christians, they are different. They don't think about the Palestinians as Muslim people. They think the Palestinians about Palestinians, regardless of their religion, because there is nothing from Judaism against Islam, nothing, as a philosophy.
But it's, in modern times, it's become, in the minds of many people, something else. It's become all convoluted.
Yeah.
That's a stereotype caused by political situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep reading now. Text 15.
One should exhibit subservience when in the presence of men of stature, rather than seeking to inflate his own image.
Interesting.
Rambam. Alternatively, The word kal may be interpreted as light, lightweight. One should be light and swift-footed in tending to the needs of great men who are older than he and who occupy leadership positions.
Okay.
Rabbi Abba Arika.
Let's get, Adrian, if you want to read.
Yeah.
Okay,
These are
Russia,
the
because
presence
Russia,
of
of course, again, is going to offer a totally different approach and understanding of the Mishnah.
This Mishnah is a reference to one's approach to God, who stands at the head of everything and everybody. One should be contrite and emotionally submissive in his relationship with God, always yielding his own will to that of his Creator.
Thank you. You see, it said, Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Havei kol le Rosh. Okay? In this context, Rosh, the head, means God. In this context, Venoach le Tishchoret, which have difficult words to understand. Tishchoret, what is the shoresh, the root of that word? Tishchoret. Shachor, which means black.
Shachar,
Could be shachar, but it also could be shachor. You see, they are both, they're both things interpreted here. Okay, text 18.
Rabbi Ishmael's advice to be flexible and yielding in dealing with superior governmental authority was based on the realities of Rome's dominance over the land of Israel.
Aha, so Rosh, how does he interpret Rosh? Government.
Mhm. Yeah. And the Jewish people. The two great rebellions against Rome in 66 and 135 CE had brought disaster to Israel. The rabbis of the Mishnah were in the main great realists. Throughout the long night of the Jewish exile, Jews bent their heads and attempted to survive and continue their observance of the Torah in the face of implacable hatred and persecution. Though this attitude may hardly qualify for dramatic heroism, especially by modern standards, in the long run it was a successful mechanism for the continuity of the Jewish people and Jewish life. The situation would naturally change under circumstances of Jewish statehood and power, and in many liberal democracies, but Rabbi Ishmael was dealing with the world where the physical might of the Jewish people had been shattered twice within a century by the overwhelming power of Rome. Hence, the most practical advice was the wisest course of Jewish behavior. Indeed, his counsel was valid for nearly all the centuries of dispersion and in the overwhelming majority of our host countries. Rabbi Beryl Wine.
Okay? It's interesting. So he put it in the context that he's talking about nothing to do about the way you took. What is the translation that we use here? The elder and the youth. What he's talking about is your relationship to politicians. And be nice to them. Again, I believe this rabbi is trying to understand the words of Rabbi Ishmael on its historical context.
I'm going to have to
Now
go.
it-
Please excuse me.
Nowadays, contrary to what
Using your phone.
Can
You can connect the.
I?
Yeah, when you're in the car, you connect. You go to YouTube, you connect to your car, you can hear it.
Yeah, I never figured out how to do this stuff.
I'll teach you one
You're
day.
technologically challenged.
Bye, everyone. See you.
Bye.
Drive carefully.
19.
Tishkoret, young, refers to a government official or functionary. The appointee is empowered to exact retribution from anyone who crosses him.
Aha. So basically what it says, Rosh Tishkoret, Rosh is the emperor. Tishkoret is the police officer. So I said, you have to be nice to both because you never know. You think only the emperor has power to destroy you? You do something to a lower officer, will find a way to pay you back. And who's going to do something about it? So I believe
So
many
we're always
of
talking
these,
about hierarchies?
yeah, but I believe many of these rabbis actually through this Mishnayot are trying to teach the Jewish people how to function in exile. It's something that they have to figure out. They were still trying to figure out how to live with either in another country or with another government ruling the land of Israel. They had to be taught the rules of the new society.
Weren't they teaching them survival
Yeah,
mechanisms?
but somebody had to tell them. And this Rabbi, I guess he had the moral obligation to do it. But that's, as I said, that's not the only interpretation. Text 21, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Even when one endures a life that seems
Oh,
dark.
sorry, 20.
Sorry about that. Tishchoret refers not to youth, but to old age. The root shachor, black, indicates one whose face has been blackened by life's experiences. Thus, this clause is a continuation of the previous one. One should seek to please God even in his old age.
Ah, interesting. 21, oh, I guess it's me.
It is.
Even when one endures life that seems dark, shachor, and gloomy, he should try to remain pleasant in his attitude towards God and not harbor any resentment. Okay? There's another interpretation. What it says here, Avei kal lerosh v'noach letishkoret, be yielding to the elder and pleasant to a youth, but basically not pleasant to youth, but noach letishkoret is even when you are old, you still have to be nice.
Don't become a miserable old person, in other words.
Yeah.
But is number 21,
Because sometimes the word tishkoret sometimes is translated as young or youth, because when you still have the dark hair,
oh, I see.
you're young.
In number 21, he's saying he should try to remain pleasant in his attitude towards God and not harbor any resentment. So I understand, you know, don't be angry at God that you are where you are and shake your fist at the sky or whatever. But it doesn't say anything in this respect about how you treat your fellow man, or is it just assumed that you would be as pleasant to the guy next door as you are to Hashem?
Oh, but it will be the next statement.
Okay.
Text 22. Lourdes, it's you.
Shammai only instructed that one receive all people with a cheerful countenance.
I think that's Pirkei Avot 119, if I'm not mistaken. And that was one of the statements from Shammai. Remember, Hillel and Shammai, they were always discussing. So Shammai said, receive all people with a cheerful countenance, which is kind of interesting because Shammai is the one when somebody wanted to convert to Judaism said, teach me Torah while I'm standing, teach me Judaism while I'm standing in 1 foot,
Yeah.
and he kicked him out.
Yeah.
But then he said, receive everybody with a cheerful countenance. I guess he did receive this perfect person with a cheerful countenance, and then he kicked him in the butt. But he received him with a cheerful countenance, which is interesting. Anyway, sorry.
Something that may not truly reflect one's inner feelings. Rabbi Ishmael goes further and speaks of receiving people, with happiness.
You see, he distinguished, according to this rabbi, Shammai Mishnah, when he said, receive all people with a cheerful countenance, well, that could be faked. What this Mishnah said, Rabbi Ishmael said, receive every people besimcha, with happiness. It means you have to work it out in a way that you are truly happy. That is not just a smile that you put on your face. Yes.
One should respond easily and quickly to requests from one's elders or superiors, but not necessarily to one's juniors. But if one acquiesces to the request to a younger person, he should do so affably. On the other hand, if one must refuse a request, he should do not amicably, making sure to convey that he would like to comply, but is unable to do so.
Okay, it's interesting, but it still said that it's you know, the elders come first when you do it, and that's why they are listed that way in the Mishnah. 23, Eddie.
Rabbi Ishmael lived through the deposing of Rabban Gamliel as Nasi and the appointment of the young Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in his place. He therefore warned his colleagues and students to treat the young Nasi pleasantly.
Okay, so this is another rabbi, another book. This was a book of on Pirkei Avot, who tried to understand the statement in the historical context. But he wrote it because he saw the way this young rabbi was treated poorly by other people. Why? Because he was young.
One should be light and easygoing in approaching leaders of society on behalf of others. In addition, he should be agreeable in the first place when asked to intervene on behalf of those in need. He should receive joyously all who need his help and make them feel instead as if they are helping him.
Okay, in this case, he said, it's not if you approach the authorities, but you have to approach the authorities with respect when you are requested to do so. And we have a couple more texts. Yeah, let's skip 25, let's go 26, we are over time here. Text 26.
I once arranged for a congregant of mine to visit the study of a great scholar. This congregant was struggling with issues of faith and personal problems, and I felt that the visit would be enormous help to him. Although the scholar was wise and articulate, he did not exude warmth. The visit turned out to be a disaster, for it had the exact opposite effect upon my congregant than the one I had intended. Soon after, the man resigned from the congregation and drifted away from participation in active Jewish life. I have often wondered whether the scholar even remembers the visit, let alone is aware of the damage done by his lack of hospitality. People are delicate beings. Greeting them with a smile and a good word goes a long way in this world in advancing the cause of righteous behavior.
Beautiful.
Rabbi Barrow.
Beautiful. Text 27.
A well-known aphorism is attributed to Rabbi Israel Salanter. A person's heart is a result hayahid, but his face is a reshut harabamim, public domain. This means that even if a person is beset with problems or suffering, he should strive to hide them from those around him, unless, of course, they are able to help him deal with the sorrow.
With the troubles.
When one's trouble written all over his face, it will cause distress and pain to those around him. They will wonder if his sullen or angry countenance was caused by, or it is directed at them. It is far from easy to fully adhere to Rabbi Salanter's words. Nevertheless, it was always the hallmark of great Jews to strive to do so, to present a cheerful countenance to those around them.
Very interesting. I love this when it says a person's heart is a private domain, but his face is public domain.
Yeah.
So you have a responsibility the way you present to others, because you have no idea how much you can influence positively other people just by the way you present yourself, the way you treat other people, the way you greet other people, the kind of voice you use, the body language you use. It doesn't mean that you don't have the problems inside yourself and try not to transpire, because many people, they take everything personally, right?
Yes.
And we know better,
We
but
exhibit subtle signs in our facial expressions, our body language,
Oh, yeah.
and all kinds of things.
yeah.
But people can tell if you don't, on the one hand, I understand what it's saying, is keep your service to yourself and greet everyone pleasantly, put a smile on your face. I understand that. But on the other hand, further back, It's almost that we are being instructed to be somewhat hypocritical in our approach and behavior by greeting someone really very pleasantly and kindly, when the truth of the matter is, we feel completely opposite towards that person.
But it's not about one person in particular. It's about the way you present to society. We're not talking
So
about
it's
one
not- none of these-
specific person.
None of these are individual, they're always.
It's the way
for
you
the
are,
community.
you know, of
Okay.
course, if you have some problem with somebody, you may not smile at the person, but that's a different issue. The thing is, we know people that they are angry all the time.
Yes, that's.
And then you may say, maybe it's me. And then you realize it's not you at all. But sometimes, and I guess there are different people in different situations. I believe when this rabbi is talking here, it's mostly talking about probably other rabbis who are reading his writings. So specifically for a rabbi, for a leader, it's very important the way you present yourself.
Absolutely.
You have to be a positive influence. And if you are walking around with, you know, I'm a troubled person all over yourself, there's not much you can do for others. Okay, thank you all for coming. I will say,
Thank you.
next meeting, it will be on May. We are going to a Hayat. It's going to be an email coming from Sherry Zedek. I think it's, I'll tell you right now, it's May 15. May 15 is the next class. Because the next one that we had planned,
It was just before Pesach.
just before Pesach, and when my wife saw it, she was about to kill me. She said, "Don't do it, I will cancel, don't kill me, don't kill me." And I stopped her just in time.
And that's
The
why,
knife was at-
and that's
at
why
this
you're
level.
still alive.
Yeah, but
Yes.
yes.
We'll send her a thank you note.
Phew, I will talk to the people.
So,
Take
yeah.
it easy.
Yes, okay.
May 15th.
May
Be
15th.
polite.
It's in my calendar, I have it.
That's